Good morning. Great to see all of you. Hope you enjoyed this song. Somehow that song really resonated with me this week. I hope it was meaningful for you. It's a really beautiful song. And I think it really fits in well with the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is vision. And as Pastor Donia shared, we're going to be going into a new series starting this week on our vision for our church, our local community. And, in our lives, it would be nice if we could just have an idea of what we wanted our life to look like, and we could say, okay, that's what's going to be, and then autopilot, and our life just turns out that way. But life doesn't work like that. I'm sure all of you can attest. And sometimes we go through real challenges in our life. Sometimes we get really discouraged. Sometimes we get really distracted. Sometimes we just go through different phases of our life, and we have to re-examine, where am I going? What am I doing? Why do I exist? Why get up in the morning? And so I want to be talking a little bit about that today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about, how we apply that as a church and as a community as well. We have to talk about this from time to time because, we established a, vision for our community, and many of you may remember a few years ago, we spent about 6 months talking about it. We did a series on every point in our vision statement at the back of the room, and we really dove into it. Why is each point important, and what is the benefit of each point? What would it look like if our community really looked like this? And it was a really, really cool experience. But even that, we forget, right? I'm sure many of you may remember that we did that, but how much would you actually remember of what we actually talked about? Probably not a whole lot. This is the kind of the crutch of public speaking, or I think anyone who's ever been a teacher can imagine, how frustrating it is. You spend all this time teaching something only to have your students remember maybe one thing, something like that. Or they might just remember the feeling. So anyway, this is like that too. We need to be reminded from time to time. We need to be re-encouraged from time to time. And, maybe get some new insights. We really hope to make this new series new. Not just hearing the same thing over again, but something refreshing, something deeper, maybe something you didn't consider before. So that's really our hope with this series. And so anyway, basically today I'm going to be introducing the series because I'm going to be talking about vision. I think it's also a very good time to talk about this as well because I think this past year and a half has been very upending for a lot of us, whether it's because of COVID or just all the rapid changes happening in our lives, what we can and can't do, and things happening in society, things happening in politics. I think a lot of people feel kind of like, what is going on? So it's a really good time to refocus in on ourselves, what we have as a vision for our life and what we have as a vision for our church. Having a vision in our lives is everything. We can't emphasize it enough, how important it is to have a vision for what we want our lives to look like, what we want our families to look like, what we want our world to look like, what we want our community to look like. We're always running into challenges. Maybe I have some idea of what I want my life to look like, but aren't we always running into challenges in order to make that happen? I'd love my marriage to look a certain way. I'd love my family to look a certain way. I'd love my house to be a certain way. I'd love my relationships with my family, my in-laws, my coworkers to look a certain way. But don't difficult things happen all the time? I feel hurt. I hurt somebody, inadvertently, accidentally. There was some misunderstanding. We run into these challenges all the time. And if we don't have a vision for what we want those relationships to look like, it's easy just to go with my feeling. I'm hurt. I'm upset at this person. I'm upset at the church. I'm upset at the government. And we can live our life constantly in this frame of mind of reacting to the situations that are happening in our life every day. But having a vision for my life helps to ground us into what we're trying to create, and we don't get too distracted by all the different challenges that are coming into our life. It gives us the strength to forgive. It gives us the strength to sacrifice. It gives us the strength to be able to do what needs to be done, to let go sometimes when things are difficult. When Adonia and I were just getting started in our marriage 17 years ago or so, we found a lot of challenges, actually. We get along really well now. Obviously, we still have our ups and downs. But those first few years were really difficult. And one of the biggest challenges for us was communication. So even though we speak the same language, we were living very, our focuses were very different. She was doing her missions program for 4 years, and I was at home going to school, and we were just, those first few years of our life was a long-distance relationship, but also our communication styles were so different. And I have a lot of memories, and Adonia could probably tell you this in more detail, but I have a lot of memories of when we would try to have a conversation about something maybe I was upset about or, wanted to talk with her about something, and it was so difficult to just talk. It was so difficult to just get out what I wanted to say, and she often would feel like not sure how to respond, and we would sometimes we would sit in a cafe for 2 hours and just sit there, not really sure how to talk to each other, not really sure how to digest what each other was saying. And it kind of went on like this for a long time, and I think that both of us felt at that time, oh my God, how is this going to work? How are we going to get past this point? Because this is awful. If you've ever tried to really be able to have a real conversation with somebody and you just can't, doesn't it just feel terrible? And we were just stuck in that limbo for 3 years. And part of us was like, oh my God, is this it? Is this what our relationship's going to look like? Because we didn't know how to get past that. And we weren't really sure if we ever would. Because we see examples of people who kind of you get stuck in a place in your relationship, you get stuck in a rut, and sometimes people stay there. And we didn't want that, and nobody does. But then, how to get out of it? It would have been very easy at that time to just kind of give up, or to just get discouraged, or just get, complacent. Just accept, well, I guess this is it, We just have to be satisfied with it and try the best to live our lives. But because both of us really had this vision of what kind of a couple we wanted to create and a family we wanted to create that was more than that, somehow, I don't even really know how, getting support from, people we trusted in, elders, and getting advice from people and mentors, we somehow got through that period. And, it still pops up every once in a while because, these things don't just disappear. But it's become much easier for us to communicate. And if there's a real hard barrier there, we can get through it a lot faster. It's not like it's easy or instant, but we can get through it a lot faster than we could before. But without that vision of what kind of a couple we wanted to be and what kind of parents we wanted to be for our kids and everything, it can be really easy to just get discouraged. It can just be really easy to just settle for, well, I guess this is my life, So, having a vision for what you want your family to be helps so much. It helps so much. And, that can look like many different things in our life. Of course, I'm talking about relationships a lot, but there's many areas in our life where we can have an idea of what we want to see our life look like. This could be education, this could be money, it could be a job, it could be, what else did I put here? I put retirement, building a collection, or maybe reaching any kind of goal that you may have for your life. And having something gives us, we get excited, right? Oh, I have something I'm working towards. And this action, the thing that I'm doing in my life is helping me to get to that point. It gives us energy to get out of bed. Not just to get out of bed like, oh my God, another day, but we get excited to get out of bed. I have purpose. It gives us, the energy to wake up early, to sacrifice spending sometimes. We don't mind because we see that there's something I want, and I can see the benefits of that thing for my life. But even these personal goals or vision that we may have for our life will eventually be dissatisfying for us. It's not bad to have a goal to get a certain education or get a certain job or to retire early or whatever our goal is in life, whatever gets us inspired. But as long as they're connected to me and my happiness, personal, eventually it will feel a little dissatisfying. And there's a reason for that. Okay. So our founder, Reverend Moon, he talks a lot about purpose, as do a lot of people these days. But I want to share a couple things that he said. This is from his autobiography. He said, "Your choice of occupation should not be based on just your talents and interests. Whether you become a firefighter, a farmer, or a soccer player is up to you. But what I am referring to transcends your occupation. What kind of life will you lead as a soccer player? How will you live as a farmer? What is your objective in life? To set your objective is to give meaning to the life you will lead. If you are going to be a farmer, then you should set your objective to test new agricultural methods, develop better species of crops, and help eradicate world hunger. If you are going to be a soccer player, then set a meaningful objective such as to heighten your country's image in the world, or to establish soccer camps that will nurture the dreams of economically deprived children." I think that what he's talking about here is that whatever goal we have in our life, try to create a higher purpose around that goal. By doing so, we give our life much greater depth of meaning, much greater depth of value than if I just were to become a successful soccer player or if I was just to become a successful gardener. Because by doing these things, by expanding, it benefits not just myself, but it benefits other people, it benefits the world, and I think ultimately benefits God, which is, in my opinion, the goal of living a religious life. How can my life be a way of returning love and give something back to God? That, in my opinion, is the goal of what a religious life should embody or should create over time. And I know that it's very common for people to say that, when you're talking about what you're doing in your life, like, oh, if I'm happy in my life, then surely God is happy. And I think that that's true. But I think that we also have to recognize that this is a little bit of a very simple understanding of a relationship with God. And that as people of faith, we need to go deeper. We need to become more mature in our relationship with God. Not expect God to just be happy with whatever we're doing, because if I'm happy, God is happy, but to also consider what are God's needs. And we understand God has needs. God is sad. God is suffering from the things that he sees in the world. And, this is what we want for our own kids, right? For them to grow up and not just be receiving from us and, hey, mom and dad, look, I'm happy doing this and I'm happy doing that. Of course, as parents, we love that of our kids. But eventually we want our kids to grow mature. And we want them to think, well, how can I be a help of my parents? How can I take some of the load off of my parents' shoulders? My parents have done everything for me up until this point. They've taken care of all of my needs. They've loved me, even if I didn't always appreciate them. What can I do for my parents? How can I help them? What is troubling them, and what can I do to even just a little bit take care of that? If we want that for our own kids, and I think that it gives us a hint of what God is hoping from his children as well. That we not just be satisfied to have God see us happy, but also to think, well, how can I, through my passion in life, give something back to God? How can I help God in some way? I think this is really important to see that as a goal in our life. This is another excerpt from the Divine Principle. It says, heaven has implanted in human beings a nature such that those who place their ultimate purpose of life in the material world will eventually come to feel a great void and emptiness in their hearts. When people come to know God through the new truth and encounter the reality of the spirit world, they will realize that they should not set the ultimate purpose of life in the material world, but instead should look to the eternal world. They will walk the path of faith, and when they reach their final destination, they will meet as brothers and sisters. This is another verse, or another quote as well. We were all created to be great men and women. God did not send us into this world without purpose. When God created us, he invested his complete love into each person. So we were all created for greatness. Because God exists, we can accomplish anything. So similarly to how we are always seeking to find, what is my purpose? What am I here for? We need to do it as a community as well, for our community. We need a vision that we can believe in and that we can be inspired by and buy into. And that's not easy. Each and every one of us comes from many different backgrounds, has many different priorities, and many different stages of your life. How can we find something that we can all feel passionate about and inspired by? It's not easy, but Adonia and I, we really have a hope and a dream that can happen in our community, that we can really create something like that. So that's why we want to talk about our vision for our church today. Because we need to understand, why do we come to church? Why do we even have a church? Why are we here? This may seem like a really fundamental question, but we don't ask it enough. So I want to share an excerpt from my favorite church growth book, The Purpose-Driven Church by Pastor Rick Warren, where he talks about this point. He says, in Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people perish. Many churches are barely surviving because they have no vision. They limp along from Sunday to Sunday because they've lost sight of their purpose for continuing. A church without a purpose and mission eventually becomes a museum piece of yesterday's traditions. Nothing discourages a church more than not knowing why it exists. On the other hand, the quickest way to reinvigorate a plateaued or declining church is to reclaim God's purpose for it and help the members understand the great tasks the church has been given. A purpose statement reduces frustration because it allows us to forget about things that don't really matter. Isaiah 26:3 says that God gives perfect peace to those who keep their purpose firm and put their trust in him. A clear purpose not only defines what we do, it defines what we do not do. I'm sure you'd agree that your church does not have time to do everything. The good news is that God doesn't expect you to do everything. Besides, there are only a few things really worth doing in the first place. The secret of effectiveness is to know what really counts, then do what really counts and not worry about all the rest. So Adonia was sharing with me this story this morning and about the founder of Acton Academy, that's, with the education model that Heartland Academy is using. And she was telling me how the founder was here in Colorado, in Aspen, this summer, like a month and a half ago, and he was paragliding. And there was a malfunction with his equipment, and he fell 100 feet. And he landed on his tailbone and broke his back. And he somehow is recovering from a pretty bad injury. He could easily die from that kind of an injury. But he's been in recovery ever since. And he is the founder of Acton, so he's got all these schools all around the world that he's communicating with and all this stuff that he needs to do. But because he's bedridden and probably in a lot of pain, I'm guessing, he's only able to spend about 2 hours a day on his phone or whatever, replying to emails and things like that. But Adoni was telling me, like, he was doing an interview with somebody recently, and he was saying, actually in those 2 hours, he can do everything that is important to do, surprisingly. Even though maybe in the past, before that happened, he would probably spend all day working on those things. And it really kind of made me wonder, man, how much time do I spend doing things that I probably don't need to be doing? I don't know, probably a lot. I don't want to think about it too much. But I think that hopefully it doesn't take a serious incident like that to really make you think about what's important, or like what's important for me to be doing versus what's just not really so important, or things I could ask other people to do, or things that I don't need to be doing at all. But having like a clear, in Rick Warren, I really like him so much because he's given me so much inspiration for what a church could look like. He's given me so much inspiration. Like, our vision statement is loosely based off of the vision statement that he created for Saddleback Church 40 years ago. And I came to recognize, especially as I have many friends in other unification churches around the country, and I've spent a lot of time visiting churches. And he's really right. Whether you're in any number of any churches or in one of our churches, this is a real challenge. Why do we make the effort to come together every Sunday? Why do we make the effort to have Sunday school? Why do we make the effort to have lunches? Is it really valuable? Is it really necessary? Because a lot of churches are just surviving. And, we don't want to be like that. But I don't think anyone does. But somehow we just get caught up in those things. One of the things that I kind of discovered as I have visited many of our churches around the country is that a lot of our churches are kind of working off of a borrowed vision. We have these big hopes and ideals that our like international church and our national church are doing, and we kind of try to go along with that and get inspired by it and work towards it. But one of the things and it's not bad to be working with another vision, but it's also really important that we have something that we identify as our own. Like, this is what our community is specially prepared by God to be able to accomplish, that maybe other communities can't do, or, this is God's hope for our community, for our families, for each and every single one of us. That's something that we have to identify. That's something that we have to work on. That's something ultimately that we're going to be inspired to be able to not just come to church, but be inspired about what we're working towards, what we're trying to create, what we're trying to build. So I want to go through our vision statement real quick. And for some of you, this is new. For some of you, you've heard this before. But just ask this, especially if you've heard it before, just try to have a fresh mind about it. And we're going to be going through and talking about these things over the coming weeks. So the first one is that we are a place where people from all walks of life can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. Number 2 is that we are a church that isn't a church, but a family, where the experience of community, love, and God's grace abound. These first 2 points, I kind of consider them to be points of culture, of creating a community and family, how we treat others and how we treat each other. Without a guiding idea of how we should treat each other or how we should treat new people, we tend to treat each other the way maybe we feel. Oh, this person, I don't like this person. They believe differently than I do. They have different parenting styles, different political views. Maybe this person comes from a different kind of background than I do, or we have nothing in common, or maybe this person said something to me once and it was very offensive. Don't these things happen, right? Even if you only see each other once a week at church, these things happen. It's amazing. We have to have an idea of what kind of relationships we're trying to create, what kind of a sense of community we're trying to build. Otherwise, it's easy to just take things very personally. So, despite the challenges of trying to bring together such a diverse group as our community, I really believe that this is really, really important. All these things are really, really important. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. The next one is that we are every person growing to spiritual maturity through studying God's word, prayer, making devotions, small groups, and taking on a ministry to care for the needs of and give to others. And then we are equipping every person for a significant ministry by helping them to discover the gifts and talents that God gave them. These 2 I consider to be culture of discipleship and growth, because no matter where we are in our life, we have room for growth. We have room for development. There's things that we don't understand and areas that we need to develop in our lives. So we want to have a culture of embracing that. Embracing, I can be better. I can do, I haven't done enough. This is one thing that I really love about our founder. How he, even at the end of his life, in his 90s, and he, after having done so many things for God and lived his life exclusively for God, his attitude was, I haven't done enough. And I want to be like that too. I want our community to be like that. How can we grow? How can we develop ourselves? How can we give more back to God? So the next one is that we are building God-centered marriages and families that are the dwelling place of God and the cornerstone of a healthy society. This is a culture of putting a priority on family. Next is that we are sharing with the people of the Denver area the truth that has been hidden in the Bible until now, God's original purpose of creation, how humanity fell away from God, and our path to returning to God's ideal and dream. This is a culture of sharing. No matter how grand our ideas may be and our hopes for ourselves, we want to always remember that there are people looking for what we have, and that God is always wanting his children to share and reach out to his other children that may be looking for it as well. We own a beautiful and modern building that serves as the hub for all our many family and faith-based activities going on throughout the week. This is a culture of stewardship, of taking care of what we have. We always think, if I had this nicer house, if I had this nicer car, if I had better looks, if I had, better coworkers, then my life would be better. But I really think that we first need to appreciate and care for the things that we have already. Of course, I'm talking about material things here, our building, but I'm also talking about people and circumstances in our life. This is what I think good stewardship is. Now, there's nothing in there about something being new, but even something that's old can be loved and cared for and refined and beautiful. And lastly, we are a community that embodies the legacy of living for the sake of others and building the kingdom of heaven here on earth that our founders, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, whom we call the true parents, have passed on to us. And this is the culture of inheritance. This is the culture of recognizing the goodness that precedes us and doing everything that we can to inherit all the goodness from it. Now, to be fair, there are many things that, in our church and in our history of our church that maybe are not ideal to inherit, things that we could work on, things that could be improved. But there is so much beauty and goodness there too, and we want to inherit those things. So you may notice that I talked a lot about culture, and I put culture in there because for me, culture is, it's more important than what you hear on a Sunday. It's more important than the words that I'm speaking today. It's more important than what we're having for lunch. It's more important than having all these events and programs. We can have a family camp. We can have a spring refresh. We can have, this event or that event. The point is not the event itself. The point is what is the experience people are having at these events. And that comes down to culture. How are people treating me? How much care and energy has been put into this experience? Or is it just something that's being put on to check a box? Culture, it's the experience. How did I feel God? Did I feel loved? These are the questions that people ask when they walk away from these things or when they walk away from coming to a church service. And that ultimately is what we're trying to create. Having this vision, making effort to fulfill the vision, being consistent with the vision, will define what kind of culture we have in our church. Because if we don't have a vision, or we're not really consistent with the vision, or we're not taking the vision seriously, then we will just have whatever happens naturally, which in my experience, not that great. But if we intentionally make effort to grow myself, to forgive others, to embrace people that are differently than me, then over time, you'd be amazed to see what happens. When I think about a vision like this, I think about, well, okay, great, that sounds nice. But what would this look like if we were to actually do it? What would be the benefits? Isn't that what we all want to know when we think about my plan for the future? What is the benefit for me, right? For example, many people, my sister-in-law and her husband, they're doing the FIRE, financial independence, retire early, right? Saving and saving and saving so they can retire early. So for people who are doing that, you're imagining what my life will look like when I'm retired early and I don't have to work and I have the freedom to be able to travel and to be able to do whatever I want to do. And that is the thing that motivates you and makes you willing to make the sacrifices the word skimp keeps coming into my mind, but it's not the right word. Trim expenses and make sacrifices, because that's what you have to do. Turning the thermostat down to save, a little bit of money every month on your utilities, because you know that over the course of 20 years or 30 years, that's going to be a lot of money. Or maybe something else that you're trying to accomplish in your life. We have a vision to have a beautiful family because we can imagine what a beautiful family would look like and how much we would want that. And we know what it's like to be a part of a dysfunctional family or to be a part of families that are painful or, I think all of us have some experience of that, or we have good friends that go through so much unnecessary trauma in their life because of their relationships and their family. So we envision what a beautiful family would look like, and that motivates us to work hard, get help when we need to. So same with that, with our community. We have to think, well, what are the benefits? What would that look like if we were striving to fulfill this vision? What would it look like if we took all these seriously and we consistently worked on it over years? Well, this is what I think. By no means am I, you don't have to take this to be your understanding, but this is why I'm motivated to do this. This is why even in the last 24 hours, there was 2 separate incidents that happened that just made me so upset. I just wanted to yell, and I didn't want to be here at church today, by the way. These things happen. These things happen, and why keep working towards creating a community like this? This is why, for me, I think that if we could create a community like this, I think, first of all, God would want to be a part of it. Obviously, God wants to be a part of everybody's life. God wants to be a part of any community, functional or dysfunctional. But I think that God would be drawn to want to be a part of a community that's trying to accomplish this, because it really reflects what God is trying to do in the world. And it also reflects God's personal journey. I know this might be a little strange to say, but God also has a vision for this world and for his children that he's trying to create. And it's not there yet. And it's gone through many ups and downs and discouraging situations. But God is not giving up. God is continuously working to create it. And it will happen someday. God is trying to do it, and we're trying to do it too. We're on the same journey. I think also that whether we realize it or not, we are all looking for a community to be a part of, of a support for us, and that we can be a support too. We can create that. We can have a system in place to help us experience growth in our lives. We have a supportive environment for our kids and our grandkids to grow up in. It gives a meaningful place for people to be able to invest into. And I think that for God, it gives him more of a place to dwell, a foothold in this world, more of a place to work in people's lives, and a place to bring his children who are searching for a deeper relationship with him. It's the kind of church that I want to be a part of. It's the kind of church I want to raise my kids in. And it's the kind of church I want to invest into creating and being a part of. And I'm encouraged because we've come such a long way. It hasn't happened quickly. It hasn't happened easily. It's been almost 7 years, but it's happening. And I'm very encouraged by that. And I believe that if we work together, we can make it happen. Please join me in prayer. Good morning, our most beloved Heavenly Parent. We thank you so much for this morning, every single person here, and for this message, that we can be reminded of what we are striving for in our lives, what we are striving for as a community, as a church. We're sorry, Heavenly Parent, we lose sight of our lives and our hopes. Many times we get discouraged. Our lives and the challenges that we go through many times, and how we sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we don't know the way forward, Heavenly Parent, but I really pray that if this vision is something that inspires you, if this vision is something that is worth striving for as a church and in our own lives, that we can work on it, Heavenly Parent, that you please put it deeply into our hearts. And whatever vision that we have for our lives, for our families, for our marriages, for our world, Heavenly Parent, we really want to offer those things to you. We want you to be a part of it. We want to invite you into all of our relationships and the efforts that we are making, because ultimately we want to return love back to you. We want to inspire you, Heavenly Parent. There's so many things in this world that that give you grief. This world doesn't look anything like the world that you wanted to create. And in our lives, we have so many problems. And we often find ourselves having to apologize, not just to you, but to the people in our lives. We're grateful, Heavenly Parent, that you always encourage us to get back up again. You always encourage us to try again. You encourage us to keep going and to not give up. And we know that if we hold on to you and you have never given up on your hopes for us, if we can walk hand in hand with you, that eventually we'll get to the destination together. Eventually we'll be able to achieve the things that are so deeply ingrained into our hearts that we want. We ask for your help, Heavenly Parent, because we know that we can't do it all by ourselves. We know that we fall short in so many ways, and we try to do too much. We try to do things that we shouldn't be doing. But we really pray for your guidance, for your support, for your encouragement, for your direction in our lives and in our community. And I offer this prayer in our names as Blessed Central Families. Amen and adieu. Thank you.